Thank you very much. As the panelists get settled, I'll introduce myself once again. My name is John Lesher. I'm Principal Environmental Planner with the Montgomery County Planning Commission. I think I have been invited here because of the work that I've done with the county. I've been involved in numerous renewable energy conservation, and sustainability planning efforts. I've been part of 3 municipal sustainability plans in the county, Cheltenham, Collegeville Borough, and Pottstown Borough, in conjunction with their school district, have all adopted municipal sustainability plans, and the county has been a part of that process. So I think that is my street cred that got me up to the podium. You've heard from most of the panelists here today already. There are 2 that you have not heard from. They are in your program. First, Lorna Rosenberg, who is EPA, what's your title now?
Numerous titles. Green and Healthy Schools and Green Buildings Specialists.
But more importantly than that, she is a Cheltenham resident, and she was the vice president of the steering committee for their sustainability plan process. So that's what I think is more important. And Laurie Actman is here. You have I forgot my sheet, you have a very long job title now.
I do have a long job title.
But I became aware of Laurie during her time with the city of Philadelphia and her sustainability work, especially with green work, sorry.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do is I have a couple of questions that I'm going to lead off with to get the conversation started. And then we will, you have had questions on note cards that you've been able to provide. So if we don't get a chance to go through all those note cards, there is a networking kind of time after this, so feel free. I'm going to volunteer the panelists to get harassed, myself included, by audience members who would like to ask us questions. But first off, I'm the father of 3 small children, so I talk to my kids all the time about the power of words and what they say and how it's important. One of the things that I find interesting in this conversation is there's so much jargon. There's so many terms that are thrown out when we talk about these topics. We talk about sustainability, we talk about resiliency, we talk about adaptation. And I think it's very important for us to have a clear idea of what those mean. So how can we use these words correctly, and how can we use it in a manner that really conveys our message? I don't know if anybody wants to hop in on that.
I'm happy to quickly hop in. And thanks for having me. Thanks for organizing this. Thanks to the commissioners and others who are here. And I just wanted to quickly say a few things. So I had the opportunity to help launch Mayor Nutter's sustainability plan. And that was a really daunting and complex task. This was 10 years ago. New York City was the only city that had a sustainability plan at that time. So the first thing he did was send us to New York to meet with Bloomberg's people. And I think there are I'll get to the terms in one second, but there's a few contextual things. And I worked very closely with Drad and Dianne and a bunch of people here during that time, including Lorna. The great thing about what's going on in Lower Merion, both at the township and also the school district, has been a long-time leader, is that there's already a lot of work going on. And the way that we got buy-in from the city government in Philadelphia was that we went to talk to all the operating departments and realized there were all these initiatives across city government that were underway that could easily help achieve sustainability goals. So kind of recognizing the already existing leadership and activity and kind of measuring that, that's part of how to get this started. I mean, I think Lower Merion has a great head start. So the other thing that was really important in the city, and I think it's also important in Lower Merion, given the context in which we live, is a lot of people think there's definitely an environmental part of sustainability, but a lot of it is also about efficiency and cost savings. And so this is about efficient use of public resources. So when you're talking about a school district or a township that runs facilities and public buildings, there's a lot of value you can squeeze out of these initiatives that make the public dollar go farther. So I personally think that, yes, these terms are important. That there's a lot of social equity and social impact and a lot of environmental kind of goals that go into them. But leading with the efficiency part sometimes is very helpful to make it something that everyone can appreciate, maybe not just those who are the environmental advocates. So that's kind of, I don't know, some thoughts I wanted to put out there since I'm here on the panel. Thank you.
And as far as answering my questions go, if you don't want to answer my questions, but you want to say something cool, that's completely fine, because that's what we're here for.
So just to add to Laurie's comment is spot on. In particular, I want to say we're not in the real world. We're in the real world here, but sometimes when you get into the business world and outside of academia, you don't know who you're dealing with, whether it's a D or an R, or whether it's somebody that's interested in what we're talking about or less interested. And so you're not sure exactly kind of who the person is. And so it's hard for somebody to not react to at least economic sustainability, and they tend to hijack that word a little bit for viability is what they're really talking about. Can something be viable, meaning can the economics work? But so efficiency can tend to at least talk to those people. Return on investment, ROI, tends to at least speak to the frontal lobe of those people, versus the typical definition, at least for sustainability, is it comes from like 1987. There's this Brundtland report that talks about like meeting the needs of the present without compromising the needs of the future. So using what we need now without compromising future needs, our kids' needs. That's kind of sustainability in a nutshell. So using what we need now but not hurting the future. That's in a nutshell.
So Brad, if I can just jump in on
Yeah,
that a little bit, and this sort of has to do with the definitions of the other two, which I can address a bit, is the fact that one of the things that happens in this conversation and that gets sometimes lost, as we've been talking about economics, is that sometimes there's an upfront cost that's greater than what we anticipate. Yet, the long-term benefit is valuable and has to be amortized and has to be considered. And that's always where the scales are either in balance or out of balance, and that's what we have to grapple with. So that's sort of some of this part of talking about sustainability that's critical. Let me just, I've been working a lot with FEMA, not here in Pennsylvania.
So footnote, Lorna, for 1 second. So when you hear people talk a little bit about life cycle costing, that's what Lorna's talking about. Looking at both the upfront cost, but the cost over the time of the equipment, so the life cycle cost, to measure not just the upfront, but the savings over the entire investment cycle.
Brad, maybe you know this data, I don't remember it off the top of my head, or Laurie, you may know. What's the cost of building a building versus the cost of operating that building over its lifetime? Do you remember what that data is? It's very small. The cost, you may say, oh God, we've spent $100 million on XYZ building, and you say that's so much money, how can that be? But the long-term 50-year, 60-year cost of operating that building is way more than the $50 million that you spent building it, or $100 million, whatever I said. So that being the point, that if the efficiency and, as was mentioned about your school district, all the good work that happens from maintaining those buildings well is the critical part of work. Anyway, let me just go back to resiliency. So from my work with FEMA talks about resiliency as being a culture of preparedness and continuity. So that's their short definition of resiliency. And adaptation, particularly with climate change as being at our heels or in our face, they describe as the adjustment in natural or human systems in response to climate. So as we adjust based on what we anticipate the climate to be, which is really different than what we think about when we do planning and when we do other kinds of municipal and community work, where you wind up looking at what's happened in the past in order to make your decisions for the future. And that's not working so well anymore. So we need to we need to look at this predictive modeling and some of the work on health and other things in order to help us make our decisions today.
So resiliency planning would be like, Boston has been endeavoring to create a resiliency plan around the harbor and kind of the cost in the billions of dollars to future-proof the harbor from climate change and surge for water. Or water.
Good company.
And so, same thing, so when you think about New York, there's a resiliency plan for purposes of when there is surge, how do you plan for that? And where do you build up kind of barriers, or do you add green infrastructure like was done in Philadelphia, so that when the water comes in, it quickly kind of moves out, or it's kind of sucked into the ground? And so that's resiliency planning that's kind of also taking into account adaptation and what the cost of that is, as opposed to just, what's the code tell you to do, which tends to be a minimum bar as to how you plan and what you build to.
This conversation, I gave the speakers some of the questions that I thought I was going to ask in an order, but I'm going to go off that order because I think what we've kind of started to bring into is, and looking at some of the questions that have come from the audience, a lot of the questions focus on how do you make these decisions? What are some of the tools, what are some of the information that you can use that will either help you make these decisions or influence those decision makers? Working for the county government, I have zero power. I can tell nobody nothing. They don't have to listen to me. I have to try to convince every municipality that this is what they should do. And I need to do that with data. And especially free data, because I don't have a huge budget. In your experiences, what are some of the tools, the types of information that you have been able to use that have been very effective in either making decisions or influencing decision makers?
I'd say, Mayor, what's effective when people come to ask you to make decisions?
Well, I can certainly speak to the data part. That's always the foundation of the argument. And as an energy efficiency planner, I go back to what Lorna said, which is you have to look at the life cycle, and you have to look at the externalized costs that we don't currently capture that we need to start capturing. But I can also speak to the idea of how to advocate and try to convince others. And I think that has a lot less to do with the data and a lot more to do with the story, and to personalize and to humanize what is happening in the world around us and the impact that is having on our students and our children. Our plastic bag ban, for example, sailed through council. It took one meeting, and it's because we had the middle school students from the local Quaker school. They came and they talked about their future, and it was a story. And that, to me, that is one of the most powerful elements that sometimes we forget when we're talking about climate change. We talk about data, temperatures, but the stories that are happening across the country and across the world because of climate change, that's where it really hits home, and that's how we should be talking to people about this.
I just also jump in here too. I'm in a similar role. I don't have any real power at my company. It's all influence without authority is the name of the game in sustainability. This is a prime example of influencing without authority. We're here sort of pleading with our commissioners to do something. So I think that's a great example. But it's also, I think that's right, it's the story, but it's also the data. What you can't measure, you can't manage. And what you don't track, you can't achieve against.
Right.
And so we've heard it from over and over. Let's set some clear goals and track against them and see how we do. I think, as a township, we're doing things sort of all over the place.
Right.
If we can bring it into one sort of focus to say, this is why we're doing all these things, and this is the path that we're going to go on in the future, that will help us coordinate our minds and really then engage the township to say, look, we have a plan. Why aren't we following this plan? Or what can we do to improve this plan? But right now, it's not there yet.
And I'll just add, the local utilities are usually want to be very helpful with data, aggregating data, so you can help measure yourselves and benchmark yourselves. And there's a lot of new technology you can use to understand that information and use it as a way to measure progress. So sensors and, there's a lot of ways you can now monitor that more closely. I mean, even PICO, if you open your PICO bill, they tell you, this was a big innovation that happened after, under Obama, that now you can compare your energy usage to your neighbor, and it's supposed to incentivize behavior through competition that, on average, you're using more or less than your neighbors who presumably have somewhat similar houses. So the information can be very powerful, even in just kind of behavior change.
Yeah, I would just, to add to that. So Portfolio Manager is Energy Star's tool. It's free. It's from the EPA. And so not a lot of things I don't like a lot of things from the government. I definitely don't like them telling me what to do. But this thing is actually good, and it's free. And Lorna was involved back in the day, in particular. And so Portfolio Manager allows you to measure consumption of energy and now water. So you put your data in, it takes like 5 minutes, and it tells you how good your consumption is month to month, and it allows for measurement of a building and then a bunch of buildings. And then you can sort of measure how you're doing over a period of time. And so there are a variety of consultants that will do this for a fee, but I suspect if you want, commissioners, there are people that will do this for nothing. Students would do this for nothing for you. And so you can start that pretty easily. All you need is an energy bill, and not that they would do it for free. They would need to be paid, but that's how that works. And so the ability to measure and monitor and then sort of track this online 24/7, it's very easy to set up. All you just need is your energy bill, as Laurie said. So there are some people, to go back to the original point, there's some people that are numbers people. They're going to attack you and say, I want to see numbers, I want to see ROI. They're just that's who they are. There are other people that want pictures. They want to see the story, they want to hear it, they want to see kids, they want to see kind of the smiley face. They're picture people. And there are others that are going to want to see, what are our competitors doing? So, what's the town next door to us doing? What's the town in Jersey doing? So there's no one answer. It's you have to be prepared for all of that. So it's, stories, numbers, people, pictures. The more, if you have all of it, then they're going to vote yes. If you have none of it, then they're going to want all of it. So
No.
there's no one answer, but if you have some of that and all that, it helps.
Okay, my turn. So we're really lucky at this table that we have all these experts, of course, but particularly that we have Dianne here, because what she and her colleagues and her fellow citizens have accomplished at Westchester, in Westchester Borough, is national leadership. So one of the things that she mentioned, if you were paying attention, is that they hired in Westchester a sustainability liaison person or whatever, a position, right?
Right.
Okay, so that person is really, really important, because that's the place where all this data, all this information, you can make plans out the wazoo. Excuse me. Here's the Cheltenham plan. It is a lovely plan, and John worked so hard on this plan. It is fabulous.
It's
But
very lovely.
it doesn't, it's limp, because it doesn't get the kind of attention, and it's not, and data is not being aggregated, and information and stories are not being put together so that we can really tell a good tale about what's going on in Cheltenham. And it's frustrating for those of us that worked on it and tried to put the tale together without having somebody in the government office be able to be that person, that go-to person, that, like a sustainability director at Saint-Gobain, or Brad when he was at Brandywine, or Jim at the school district, and you could use a sustainability director too, and you let them talk to me. I'll talk to them about it. But that's really important, because that person is your inside person in the government who works with the commissioners to be able to feed information back and forth. Somebody who can recruit students to work with. You know, everybody says, how can we afford, how can we afford? You can't afford not to do it. And you know what? In this township, I know this township is really, really packed with all kinds of scientists, environmental people, EPA people, DEP people, folks from all over the world that we live in terms of sustainability, that would be willing to offer time, energy, talent, and be able to support a plan that you come up with that takes baby steps to accomplish, but that could be really successful, and put you guys on the national leadership, state leadership, national leadership, as a community that shows that it's really, truly sustainable. I can't say it about my own town, so I'll say it about Lower Merion. Shh, don't tell them that.
I have this question was just handed to me, and I think it's very succinct for right now. Westchester has a sustainability coordinator. Lower Merion has an energy consultant. What's the difference?
You go. You were those both.
Piece of the puzzle.
Well, okay, so the difference is the energy consultant is a paid consultant to provide you with lots of information. I have a 16-page report I just finished here. Data, lots of information. Very good information that you need to drive decisions. But the in-house sustainability coordinator who actually works for the government is the driving force behind those decisions. They are the advocate for sustainability. They are the person who spends 8 hours a day figuring out what the community needs, how can we get it done, speaking with maybe your energy consultant and your recycling consultant and your, composting person, and pulling all of that together into a story or a presentation that is data-driven, but that is something that's going to effectively communicate to the board, because the board has, I don't know, how many issues at any given meeting do you have in front of you? And dozens, and it's so difficult. So you really need someone within the government who can do all of that background work and encapsulate it into a really effective 10-minute presentation, and then be available to answer their questions. And a consultant is typically not the person to do that, because they're not there day in and day out, and they don't really understand what the board needs. The in-house person does.
The energy consultant is like the engine in the car. They're not the car. They can help the car run. They can give you kind of good advice. The mechanic is a better example. They're a key part to the puzzle, and you need that, but you need somebody to sort of drive the car.
The other thing I'm going to say about the school district, I know you're going to speak, it's okay. But the fact is that Lower Merion School District is a Green Ribbon National Award-winning school district, the first
awesome.
one in Pennsylvania. It has won so many awards for all the work that Jim and his team have done, teachers have done, students have done. And the idea of a school district working together with the township for purchasing, for joint use of equipment, for all the things that could happen that could be potential savings and opportunities for optimization is really important. Now, do you have a liaison with the school district and the town on a regular basis?
I mean, we interact at pretty much every level staff-wise,
okay.
whether it's Parks and Recreation with our athletics directors, myself and Paul, and getting snow removal, all of those things. When we're talking about consultant versus in-house person, the key to having somebody in-house is you have to be able to react to the data. We used to get our PICO bills every month. Well, that didn't tell you anything. All that told you was you had a problem last month. At that point, PICO shifted over, and you got the energy consumption a day later. There was that program, the software that gave it to you 24 hours later. You now have on your meter, and we have it throughout the district, basically 2-minute intervals in terms of your consumption. It's actually real-time data that tells you exactly how many kilowatts you're consuming at that moment. That's been a gold mine for the school district. Why? The grid doesn't have enough power on those peak days. When we hit those hot days in August, PJM, the distribution, they used to give you money to get off the grid.
Right.
Curtail, cut down, it was called demand response. Those dollars are starting to dwindle. Our situation, when the grid is at its peak, 3 o'clock in August, okay? We don't have school in session at 3 o'clock in August. So my colleague, Ken Pitts, Supervisor Utilities, Buildings and Maintenance, he has a program. He has a whole procedure. He will sit there and watch our meters. And we will turn off air conditioning at schools because at 3 o'clock in August, it doesn't hurt anyone. What we're doing is we're reducing the amount of energy that we consume on those 5 peak days. They use that as the peak hour, the peak consumption. And if you consume less energy, less electricity at those peaks, you pay less for your electricity in the coming year. There's a peak load contribution in the charge. So you could be an energy hog all month. If you can get off the grid in that 5 hours that they're peaking, you're going to get a benefit of not being part of the peak load contribution because the utility companies, the grid, they want you off. We can do that. Not so good when we do that the first week of September and the students are back, but certainly in August, absolutely, he's on there and he's on with the mechanics. We're shutting down chillers. We're bringing lights back. We're doing everything we can to get our consumption down because there's a financial benefit. But without him there, we wouldn't have the response time.
So commissioners, irrespective of not having a plan, that's top of the class. I mean, most townships wouldn't even know what the hell he's talking about. That is top of the class, and that's best of breed, what he's talking about. That's, no, I'm not kidding. I mean, Cherry Hill would have no idea what he just said, and that's good stuff. That is really important, and that's really good stuff. You need to know what the hell you're doing there. That's sophisticated.
So, could I speak to?
There's a lot more energy than that.
There's
In fairness, you're not going to bring your police station down.
Right.
Exactly.
It's a little tricky.
Yeah.
We benefit from the fact
That
that
nobody's there.
bodies,
Yeah. But that's good stuff, though.
But I think the point is there's a potential to learn from each other within the community. Clearly, the school district is a leader. Tamar and I come from private institutions, independent schools, and we're all doing this work. You know, we do the same kind of demand response and yada yada. There's so much wisdom in our isolated schools, and so many common needs. Like we're all trying to figure out what do we do with organic waste, but we're not yet talking about it. And so one of the things that Tamar and I and the Lower Merion Conservancy are working on, and we'd love to work with the school district on, so putting you on notice, is something called the Lower Merion Climate Action Coalition, which would be a forum for all of us with big institutional footprints to work together to share best practices, to aggregate demand, because we're all pushing for the same sort of healthy, vital community long term. And I think we have a shared agenda that we can work together on. You want to say anything about that?
I'll just add one thing, is that I'm such an outlier up here because I'm a teacher and I'm a science person and I'm just different from everyone else. But I just want to say that I have an enormous amount of respect for Lower Merion Township for the absolute richness of educational institutions that are here and the gold mine of influential education that happens here cannot be denied or forgotten. And so this work by the township will have a big influence on a lot of young people as it moves forward.
I think I'm going to end on that one because we are actually at 8:30, and that is, that's a better wrap up than I could do. And there are more questions that were handed to me. The panelists and myself will still be here for a little while. Feel free to come ask us your questions. Thank you very much.
One thing Jim Lill did not mention is that the Lower Merion School District's buses for some years have been running on
CNG.
compressed natural gas,
Yep.
which is one of the things I think that earned you the green ribbon
of them.
distinction. So there are opportunities. I think it was Paul who alluded to one of the things Lorna is justly proud of, and that is the quite elegant comprehensive plan that was enacted in early 2016. And it addresses many of the things beyond the several things, some of which Paul mentioned, one of the walkability, stormwater management, a number of sustainability-related issues. One of the things the comprehensive plan did not address, although it's made an optional topic of comprehensive planning in the municipal planning code, is energy efficiency. And what the note that I would like to close on, and not to preclude further discussion over the remaining refreshments, for which we thank Mom's Organic Market for donating them. And while we're at it, thanking the Lower Merion Conservancy for sponsoring this event and for all the work that they are doing in the formation of the Climate Action Coalition. The thrust here, again, was to state the case indirectly and also directly for the merits of a sustainability planning process. We would love to augment, as citizens, as volunteers, but with the professionals, the existing comprehensive plan to make it truly comprehensive by adding as an element energy and energy efficiency. And I hope that will be an early order of business for the Board of Commissioners. And I want to extend my thanks again to our panelists and just say that we have governing bodies that are smart, farsighted, and caring. And that caring, I know, extends to the environmental legacy that they are bequeathing to our children and grandchildren. And we fail to act at their peril, if not our own. So with that, I invite everybody to consume the remainder of the refreshments and to pose questions informally to our panelists. Thank you all.
Nice to meet you. Work with Laurie, Lorna.